Welcome, everybody. We're so glad you're here. It is the first Wednesday of the month of September. Those burrs have just started. So it's September, October, November, and December. So we're finally into the cooler months of the year, so they say. We rode our bikes today and it still got up to 94 degrees Fahrenheit, and boy, it was a blistering ride. So it was so nice to come home and get ready for this evening. My name is Sue Kuentz, and I am the president and proud to be a member of the San Antonio Storytellers Association. And although we did meet live the first Wednesday of every month over at the Brook Hollow Library, they have since their hours are totally different. So right now, as much as we want to be live, we are still on Zoom, and we would love for you to encourage you to keep coming back each month and invite your friends. We love listeners and tellers of stories, songs, and poems. So please visit us. We are taping live on YouTube, so you can always go and visit YouTube and just type in San Antonio Storytellers, and you will find each month's presentation. Pick up a few stories. We always have fantastic tellers each month. And the month of September, no surprise, also has some fantastic folks here tonight. So welcome one and all. I think what we'll do is we'll get started right away with our very first teller. But I want you all to hang in there because we have a special teller, a friend, I might add, who has joined us all the way from Glasgow, Scotland. And yes, he's that handsome man looking at you right now in his white robe. He is a young man of 70 with fabulous stories to tell, and I don't want any of you all to miss him. All right. Now, with that said, we also have other fabulous tellers from our San Antonio Guild here. And what's so cool about Zoom is we can also pull in folks from all over the world. And I see another special friend, Judi, is here tonight. And I hope Judi might want to share a story. If so, just let me know. I would love for you to. Judi has told with us for several months now, and I just love every one of her tales. She's a busy gal. She's from all over. She goes all over, but she's from West Virginia. So I do hope you share a tale with us tonight. That's fabulous. And without further ado, let me introduce you to Susan Whipple, who is from Boerne, Texas, and would drive in that first Wednesday of every month to Brook Hollow Library with her husband and share fabulous tales. So tonight, we'd love to put Susan onto the stage. Without further ado, Susan Whipple.
Thank you, Sue. Hi, everybody. When I first moved to Texas, it was major culture shock for me. I came from the snow belt, so the first thing that was different was the weather. And I had to get used to the hot weather, and I did. And I think nowadays, after being here a very long time, I really feel more comfortable in the heat than I used to in the extreme cold. The other thing that I noticed was that people dressed differently. They dressed in lighter clothing and lighter colors all year long. It was so nice. And of course, they spoke differently. They modulated their voices differently. And they all said, "Y'all come back now." Another thing was the food. Here, barbecue is a big thing. And to me, a barbecue was when you went to your friend's house on a weekend and somebody would fire up the grill on the patio and cook steaks or hot dogs or hamburgers. Here, barbecue is quite different, and I like it. And then, of course, there's the Mexican food that I think properly should be called Tex-Mex. Took me a little while, but I love it now. Of course, jalapenos were fire in my mouth for a very long time. When I think of jalapeno peppers, I think of a friend of mine who came to Texas at about the same time that I did to take a job. And when he met his coworkers, they said, "Oh, you've never been in Texas. We've got to introduce you to Tex-Mex food. Let's go out one of these days to Pancho's Mexican Buffet and we'll get you going." So they made a date. And until that day, they all talked about the food and warned him about the spiciness. And they said how much he was going to enjoy it. And finally, the day came. They went to Pancho's Mexican Buffet. And while they were in the buffet line, the man next to him was helping him choose food and told him which was spicy and which was mild and so on. They got along fine until they came to a great big bowl of jalapeno peppers. And my friend pointed to the bowl and he said, "Are these hot?" And the guy next to him said, "No, they're not hot," all the while trying not to smile. So my friend took 4 of them on the plate. Well, the rest of the group saw that, and they kept him under observation while they got their seats at the table and while they began eating. They were waiting for the big explosion. Everybody began eating, and after a few minutes, my friend took his first jalapeno pepper, and he picked it up by the stem, and he popped it in his mouth, bit off the stem, and put it down on the side of his plate, and he chewed up that whole pepper. And nothing happened. Nothing. Well, they all went back to eating. And after a few more minutes, my friend picked up a second pepper by the stem, bit it off, put the stem down, chewed the whole pepper. And again, nothing. And they thought, there can't be 2 peppers that are duds in a row. Something's going on here. They all began eating again, and the same happened with the 3rd and the 4th pepper. And finally, they couldn't stand it any longer, and they said, "What's going on here? You've never been to Texas before. You've never eaten jalapeno peppers. They're very hot. We expected your face to get red and tears to come out of your eyes and grabbing for glasses of water, and nothing has happened. What is it?" And my friend leaned back and he smiled. He said, "Well, I'll tell you. When I was growing up, my best friend lived next door to me, and I spent most of the time in his house and even ate dinner with them a lot. His family was from Sicily, and his mama cooked all the traditional foods, and they were very spicy. And I'll tell you what, if you want spicy food, you ought to try Sicilian food." Thank you.
Absolutely. I love that. Thank you so much, Susan.
It was fun.
I bet. How's your husband doing, by the way? Good. Good, good, good. All right. Our next teller, let's see. I think we'll go ahead and move right to Judi Tarowsky since I did a brief introduction of her. Please do go visit our YouTube page. Her stories are phenomenal, and she does a fantastic job with just about every genre. She is also we were talking before all this started about, stories of our communities and being proud of where we live. And Judi makes sure she represents West Virginia quite well in her stories, but she tells all genres. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you Judi Tarowsky.
Okay, thank you so much, Sue. It's so much fun to be here. I really enjoy getting together with the folks from Texas. But my story tonight is a personal tale. I don't do a lot, but I'd like to take you back to the 1950s. When I was a young girl, to my hometown in Western Pennsylvania. Now, when my family moved to Newcastle, the town over the years had gone through a series of booms and busts. And when we moved there, it was going through a moderate boom. And our house was a simple ranch house. My dad built it, and it sat among the sturdy 4 square homes that had been built there, about 30 years ago. And back when the neighborhood was being developed, the planners, whoever, planted silver maple trees all up and down the street. And now in the summertime, their branches arched together over the street and formed a green canopy. And the street light in front of our house bumped its fluted tin shade against the lowest branches as it cast a pool of pale yellow light onto the concrete below. Now, we kids knew whose yards were off limits for our games of hide and seek and kick the can. And it truly was a neighborhood that if you committed a transgression, the word got home before you did. And there were, if I remember, there were tar lines on the street that connected the concrete sections. And those tar lines were our boundaries for our games of poison numbers and bounce on fly. And our neighborhood, was a healthy mix of, families with young children, older kids, retirees, and newlyweds. And I ran with the younger kids. And my brother, my older brother, he ran with the teenagers. And I couldn't wait to join them. And you have to remember at this time, teenagers right then were on the leading edge of the baby boom wave that was going to be coming in and taking over, the entire culture. They almost had their own culture, teenagers did, kind of a family. And their world, my brother's world, was an exotic one to me, a third grader who had a bedtime Mickey Mouse club and a say in absolutely nothing. And teenagers were discovering new things. They had their own way of dressing. They had their own foods. They were finding drive-ins with hamburgers, and they were discovering pizza. And some of them had cars, and they went up to Cascade Park in Newcastle for the teenage dances on weekends. And they had their own music, the rock and roll. And of course, some adults thought it was going to absolutely ruin us, and they were trying to ban it and keep us from listening to it, which meant we tried to listen to it all the more. But our local radio station, a little AM station, was now switching off its playlists from Perry Como and Patti Page to Buddy Holly and the Crickets, Elvis Presley, the Penguins, the Coasters, Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers. And I think, maybe it was the music that drew me in, because I think it was the music then for the teenagers that marked that time while they could still be young, yet it was that boundary before they became adults. But I wouldn't be invited to join that family of teenagers quite yet, not until this one special summer. Now, my brother and I do not remember why he asked our dad if he could take our little portable Silvertone record player outside after dinner and play records. But our dad said yes. So one night after dinner, Guy took the record player out and set it up on the end of the driveway. And he ran an extension cord back to the garage and he started to play his records. And they came. Teenagers. Some he knew, some he didn't. And they gathered there on the street in that pool of light and started to dance. And nobody called the police. Nobody called out from their porches, turn that music down. People are trying to sleep. And we knew they were watching because, I knew my parents were on the side porch. I could see the glow from their cigarettes. So they danced there on the street. And I crouched on the sidewalk and I was wishing I could join in. Until finally, one of the neighbor girls, Annie, from across the street, a teenager, came up and says, "Come on, Judy, let's dance." So I joined her out in the street among all those teenagers, and I tried to imitate all the cool moves that I watched on American Bandstand. And then my mother called me in. It was my bedtime. So even though my room was in the back back of the house. I could still hear their music and hear those teenagers through my open screened-in window. Well, the dances went on the next night and the next. And once again, all those teenagers gathered again as if by some unseen message that went out. And I got to dance with some of them too. But the dances ended when the record player developed a short. And our dad said it was probably because it was sitting on that damp concrete out there in the evening. And he wasn't mad. He went down to Sears and bought one of those new hi-fi Silvertone record players. I was sad to see the dances end. It had been fun joining those teenagers out in the street, that family that I was the chubby little sister who watched American Bandstand, so I could pretend I was a teenager too. But then it was my bedtime, and I fell asleep, listening to those teenagers, listening to their music, listening to them as they gathered in that yellow pool of light, dancing in the street. Thank you.
Brilliant. Oh my gosh. We saw it happen, right, everyone?
Good.
Those of us who are of that age. Oh my gosh. And the light from the cigarettes. Yes.
Everybody smoked. Everybody smoked. Yes, everybody did.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I love that. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. And I
Thank
know
you
that
for
time period too. Oh my gosh. I wish I could have been your best friend right next door. Ah,
We
that's-
would have been.
Yes. Yes, we would have been. So wonderful. I think we all related to that. I don't know if you saw everybody, but I saw their
I could.
faces. I could see their memories just moving along, especially Michael. All right, we're going to move on. I think we're going to do a little PSA at this moment because I don't want anyone to miss this. There's a very special energy moving in the city of San Antonio. And I'm hoping this energy will catch on to other cities if it hasn't already. And it's all about the power of story and healing and involving everyone, all inclusive. And Mary Grace Kettner, who's with us tonight, who, by the way, co-founded the San Antonio Storytellers Association and certainly has been a member of SASA forever and such a very important leader in our lives. And it's like my sister. She is an amazing woman with so much soul and so much heart that she is very much part of the San Antonio movement of the use of story in the city of San Antonio. So I'm going to let her let you know a little bit about what's going to happen this Sunday, but also about this fabulous website that I'd love for everybody to look into. But I'll let Mary Grace get going. And I know, John, I think you've given her power to share the screen, right? Yeah. Okay.
John, do I just press the share the screen button? Hey, there it is.
Well, yeah. Yep, there it is.
Oh, okay. I see it different. Oh, there it is. All right. Sue, you're a prophet because our next step that we want to take, well, we actually have two, but one of our next steps is to spread the idea of a story portal to other cities. San Antonio, as you know, is a compassionate city. And this idea came from our faith-based liaison, Ann Helmke, who's part of the Human Services Department in San Antonio. She said, we need to know each other's stories. You can't hate someone if you know their story. And we need people from all over the city to tell their stories. And so to start that, we have created a story portal. You may recognize the Urutria gates. That's our portal. They're across from Incarnate Word University. But we, let me just kind of scroll through it a little bit and let you read while I'll talk and not say anything so interesting you can't look and, and read at the same time. But to get people started, we have put some quotes, we put some information about stories, we put some beautiful photographs of San Antonio, and then we have stories. Our first step was to connect to organizations that already tell their story in some form or another on their own websites. And each one is different. Some of them are video. Oops, what did I do? I meant to open that. Oh, here. Some of them are video stories. Some of them are, these are all Who is My Neighbor stories and taking care of one another. A little bit of background on why San Antonio is so economically segregated and even racially segregated, how it got that way and how we're trying to change that. And here we are, San Antonio storytellers, a picture from our story celebration a few years ago. And it leads to our page where we tell about our story night. And I hope that, yes, you know, some of the stories, some of the evenings are annotated. Jane used to do little write-ups about each meeting. So, and like I say, each one is different, and I'd love for you to browse it sometime. I'll put the URL. It's Story Portal, SATX.org. And we hope there'll one day be a Story Portal SATX Austin, Story Portal Glasgow, Story Portal Flower, whatever it was, Nathan, Georgia. So this was the first step of our project. So to launch this Story Portal, and by the way, you can write a story of your own and submit it, and we'll put it on the website. But to launch it this coming Sunday, we are having an event called The Healing Power of Stories. And, you know, you and I use the word storyteller in a very particular way. And as wonderful as I think it is that someone besides us went to all this initiative to get this started, they use the term storytelling a little more broadly. So the speakers at this event are Father David Garcia and the poet Naomi Shihab Nye. Simran Singh was a new name to me, but he just has had a book come out called The Light We Give, which has got national attention. He is a Sikh, and it's about the Sikh way of life. And Mario Salas, a social activist, my whole life, I guess, most of my life, he's been fighting and speaking for things that San Antonio needs. It's all at the Whitley Center. We had our conference there a few years ago, the beautiful Whitley Center on Oblate Drive. And let's see, and there's more information here. If you go to our SA portal, San Antonio, I'm sorry, I keep saying that backwards, Story Portal, SATX.org. You can link to the events page and see that. It's this coming Sunday afternoon from 2 to 4:30. And I'm very excited about it. And you will get a chance to share some quick stories with some of your neighbors who are there, because between each of our speakers, we'll have an opportunity to reflect. So Sue, thank you so much for giving me this chance to tell about it. And I'd love to see some of you there.
You're welcome. So at the very top, Mary Grace, you can just close the screen, I think.
Oh, stop share.
Yeah, stop. Yeah, I never know the words. That's awesome. So that's pretty amazing. And I'm glad, so glad Mary Grace shared that. And you did an excellent job. Thank you so much for narrating that PSA. And yes, Mary Grace and I will be there Sunday night, and I hope you all can join us. It's free.
Oh, and that's the most important thing. It's free. And the second most important thing, or maybe close tie for first, is that Sue will be giving a short PSA for San Antonio storytellers. All of our partners who have links that we have links to will have, wow, Sue, 30 to 45 seconds to tell us everything people want to know about their organization.
Yep. I'll be working on that for the next several days. So there we go. Right. Thank you so much, Mary Grace. I hope to see many of you all there. And by the way, it will be recorded. So once it's recorded, I'll get the link out to everyone. If you, whether you're here in San Antonio or not, I think every town needs this. If you don't already have it, oh my gosh, it's wonderful. We're honored that SASA is going to be part of this. So hopefully we can continue with it. All right. Well, without further ado, I would like to introduce our next storyteller, who probably is yawning without even knowing it, because he's coming to us all the way from Glasgow, Scotland. He's a fabulous storyteller. He's been a storyteller all his life, as I suspect many Scottish folks are. It's just in their blood. I can tell. I got to meet Michael. I will say this. I was on Liz Weir's barn telling on one of the Saturday nights for them, and shared a story. And Michael sent me a comment, said a very nice thing about my story, and told me about this really cool storytelling club that he's part of, and asked if I wanted to come. Well, of course. So with that said, let me introduce a little bit more about Michael. So let's see. I met him during COVID. Thank God there are silver linings. No way would I have met Michael any other way. And where have you been all my life, young man? It's like the doors open that I never thought would open. So I'm thankful for COVID in that little way, very thankful that Zoom came into our lives and the world came into my ears and my heart and my mind. So with that, I asked Michael if he had a little bio, and he goes, oh, yeah, you can look it up. There's a great one on Wikipedia. And oh my gosh, yes, I knew Michael is an author. He's an author of eco-friendly type stories for kids. So, spread the word to the school so we can get him out there. We need to get him here in Texas, to be honest. He also was the founder and or co-founder of these particular storytelling clubs, not just for adults, but he also has another one that's for kids, of course, which is pretty amazing. He's also worked with Russians for quite a long time, trying to teach English for many, many years to them. And Michael knows more information about that, but it was so cool to get international folks through his club on, and to hear them tell their poems and their stories was just amazing. Talk about peacemaking. Want to make sure I don't miss anything. Of course, he just turned 70 in August. Happy birthday. And I know Michael's witty, Michael's clever, his stories are amazing. Don't take his stories, laugh with him. Some of his stories are quite serious, and you're going to go like, oh, I don't know what he's going to tell tonight, but I want you to hear his words. He's amazing. With that, Michael, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Sue. I wanted to pretend, I'm so vain, I'm such a vain person. I wanted to pretend I didn't hear any of that so you could see it all again. It was lovely. So yeah, a lot of what Sue said there was, I would just agree with all of that. The thing about COVID is it was a disaster. And yet from that terrible disaster, there was wonderful things happened. We had our club that's been going for about 30 years here in Glasgow online through Zoom. I'd never heard of Zoom before COVID. And on several nights, so once a month, we would meet. And several of these monthly meetings, we had 11 time zones from California, which is 5 or 6 hours behind me, to the edges of Siberia, which is 5 or 6 hours ahead. So that was kind of 10. I mean, people in Peru at the same time. This was all happening in real time with people who would never meet, all sharing stories. So the story I'm going to tell you tonight is a story I wrote called Wee Tom. It's called Wee Tom, and you know Tom Thumb, but you just don't know this guy. His name is Wee Tom. It's always written in red. It's always written in lowercase, and always has his Uncle Dan. Now, Uncle Dan is such a powerful figure in the narrative that we never ever see him. We just see parts of him. We'll see his hand or his arm. We'll see his shoulder. But the story is about Wee Tom, and it's going to be his birthday. Wee Tom's birthday is on the 14th of February, and just before the 14th of February, his Uncle Dan said to his sister, Wee Tom's mum, let's pretend it's not Wee Tom's birthday. We'll play a practical joke, and anytime he says birthday, I'll change the subject. So when Wee Tom said to his Uncle Dan that very day, Uncle Dan, I would like the theme for my birthday to be cowboys and the Wild West. And he slapped his leg and said, yeehaw, like a real Texan. And his uncle said, have you seen my car keys? Have you seen my cell phone? I'm looking for the newspaper. What Wee Tom didn't know was that Uncle Dan was very skillfully making a card for Wee Tom. He drew the most magnificent cowboy. On his chest here, he had a badge with 5 points, Wee Tom's favourite number. He has 5 names: Thomas, Patrick, James, O'Neill, Thumb. We just call him Wee Tom. 5-point badge. Sheriff. But it didn't say sheriff. It was in big writing, sheriff. The horse had its feet in the air, and it was magnificent. And round the waist of this horse, leaning right back in the saddle, Wyatt Twerp, a tough guy and a scoundrel. And Wyatt Twerp was leaning back like this, and he needed a shave. Uncle Dan then hid the card above the fish tank. Now, in another story called Wee Tom in Deep, Deep Water, the fish tank got put there for, that's another story. Early in the morning, Uncle Dan came, I say early, I mean 6 o'clock in the morning, Uncle Dan came downstairs into the street and he waited for the postman, Emcee. A factotum in all of these stories. When Emcee saw him, he shouted, "Hey, Uncle! It's 6 in the morning. I want to pretend that it's not Wee Tom's birthday. So when the cards come, don't put them through the door. We have mail delivered properly with the Queen on the postage stamps right into our very houses inside. Don't put the mail inside the house. I'll come and collect it and I'll hide it." So Wee Tom knew nothing about his birthday, and Uncle Dan had everything all organised. On the day of the birthday, on the actual 14th of February, in Scotland it's cold, it's wintry, it's snowy. Uncle Dan pulled on his big boots, came downstairs, out into the street, and got a big parcel of cards wrapped up in rubber bands, elastic bands that are red, Wee Tom's favourite colour. Everything he loves is red. Everything he loves is red. Even his pencils are red. WeeTom.com. Now here's the thing. Wee Tom was fast asleep, and Uncle Dan took these cards in, put them above the fish tank, and went back to bed. Boots off, jacket off, and up to bed. At 8 in the morning, Wee Tom woke up. His alarm was ringing. He ran out of his bed onto a little tray, and then he pulled the tray to the top of the stairs, and he teetered, and he tottered, and he teetered it, and then went flying down these stairway on a tray. Shock and horror. In front of him, there was no soft cushion to land on. Uncle Dan, help me, Uncle Dan, save me, save me. It's Uncle Dan's only role in life is to protect this child. He was in his bed. Wee Tom is cascading. Uncle Dan lifted the pillow from behind his head, and in a perfect parabolic arc, threw the pillow, and Wee Tom landed, ran to the door to pick up the mail. Now, the mail that was there was just casual stuff. There was an offer, chance of a lifetime from the Reader's Digest. There was holiday brochures. There was a bank statement. There was this kind of this and this kind of that. But there was no birthday cards. Uncle Dan came downstairs and started to make the breakfast. I'm boiling eggs. Would you like some egg for your egg for my breakfast? I would like somebody to mention happy birthday. It would be polite if somebody said, and he said, looking to his mum and dad, many happy returns. Congratulations. Uncle Dan said, it's not your birthday until the 14th. And Wee Tom pointed to that space between his feet. This is the 14th. And then he started to cry. And as he started to cry, big, fat, salty tears came. It was no longer a joke, it was a torture. So he lifted the little boy up, put him on the table and said, with a big bundle of cards, here are your cards. And Wee Tom pinged, pinged, and pinged the rubber bands all over the room. And then he ripped them open. And there was cards there, not only all over the room went the bands, the cards came from all over the world. I think, if I think about it now, there was even 2 from San Antonio in Texas. No, it was 5, because that's Wee Tom's favorite number. 5 cards came from San Antonio, Texas. So, lo and behold, things went on. And when he went out, there was cards there from Buckingham Palace. There was cards there from Hollywood. He's well connected. There was cards from Africa. There was cards from every country in the world, from A through to Z. I'll explain that to the Americans. A through Z. Everywhere. And then Wee Tom said, you know, I know why you were pretending it wasn't my birthday, because there's no card from you, Uncle Dan. But I made you. The card was still above the fish tank, and he picked it up and he brought it down and he showed that horse to Wee Tom. And when Wee Tom saw that horse like that, he wished he could horse ride. And just as luck would have it, the horse jumped out of the card. And Uncle Dan is such a skillful drawer. Do you know that that wee boy heard that cowboy speaking with a Texan drawl? Would you like to learn to horse ride, partner? And the horse spoke. And Wee Tom was like, this a talking horse? Are you a talking horse? Yep. I can't horse ride. I'll teach you, said the horse. And the Texan, the cowboy guy, Wyatt Twerp, he came off. Wee Tom went on and started riding around on the table. And at the same time, Uncle Dan heard Wee Tom say marvelous and the horse say boring together. Marvelous! What do you mean boring? This is wonderful. This is dull, said the horse. Dishwater dull. Let's get an adventure. And they got an adventure. And Uncle Dan lifted the wee boy down and the horse together as one lump onto the floor. And the horse said, yeah, now we can run. We're not jumping over silverware. Cutlery is the proper word in English, by the way. Over sugar cubes, around crockery and cups and saucers. Down on the ground, Uncle Dan built a quick obstacle course with a camera, with books, with some Lego building blocks, with rope, all kinds of stuff, CD boxes, everything was there, and the horse jumped over them. Yeah, now we're getting to it. And faster and faster. And then Uncle Dan opened the living room door where it was still dull in there. The curtains hadn't been drawn yet. And behind the sofa, there was a tiny little triangle like this of light. And behind the sofa, they went in and got bigger and bigger and bigger. And underneath the television, where that horse danced with all the skill of the Bolshoi ballet, this way and that way and this way and that way, not touching the dangerous wires or cables, as you guys insist on calling the stuff. And under the coffee table, where it was dark and fusty and powdered. We Tom Mum's not marvellous at housework. She's really not obsessive. And they measured the time, 19 minutes and 52 seconds. And they practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced. And the more, San Antonio, the more you practice at anything, the better you get. Handwriting, picking up litter, not letting the congressman away with it. And he got good at it. And he brought his best time down from 19 minutes and 52 seconds to 8 minutes and 8 seconds. And then there was no more. Nothing else could be done. That was that was the best they could do. And when you've done your best, stop. But wee Tom still wanted to be on that horse. Let me in, let me in, let me in, let me in. And the horse said, I'm exhausted. I need to go back into the cart. And the horse could no longer walk. The horse could only trudge. Slowly, slowly, slowly. And then Uncle Dan lifted the horse back up. It climbed into the cart. And wee Tom was still on the horse. And the horse was in the cart. And the magic stopped. Stopped with wee Tom stuck in the card. Now, if you opened the card, you would see blank outside wee Tom, inside blank. Uncle Dan had to save that little boy. And he got a very, very, very sharp knife and traced the line of his leg all the way down from his hip to his ankle. And then yanked him out of the cart. And wee Tom said, Uncle Dan, that was just the best thing. That's the best birthday any boy ever had in any story, in any real life, in any celebration ever. And Uncle Dan said, I'm glad. I hope you liked it. He said, well, I didn't like it. I loved it. And now I hear thunder. There's going to be a storm. Uncle Dan said, no. There'll be no storm today. Blue skies. I can hear thunder. And Uncle Dan looked at wee Tom's stomach and said, look at your tum, little boy. You've had no breakfast. You've had no snack. You've had no lunch. You started this at 8 in the morning. It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon and you haven't had anything to eat. The rumbling is in your tum. Let's get a breakfast because we're going to the pet shop. I'm going to buy little ladders for hamsters or mice. And we're going to build ladders all over this house. And San Antonio pals, if I see you again, I'll tell you what happened when they went to that very pet shop. Because wee Tom got lost in a hamster's cage village. But that's not a story for now. this evening with you and this morning with me. That's the end of Wee Tom. Hooray, it's me birthday.
Yeehaw! Oh my gosh, that was amazing. We really
So,
don't want you to stop.
that's
Oh
him.
my gosh.
And that's him going down the stairs. And is that text back to front?
Yeah, we can read it.
You can read it, that's fine. And that's him landing on the pillow. I haven't told this story for such a long time because I've not been in school. And then that's them jumping over the, let's say, cutlery. That's the obstacle course. Eva's asking what time it is. It's 1:45.
Yep. Yep, 1:45.
That's underneath the television. I love it.
Amazing. Some of us would like to somehow get our hands on you or that book. So if you have a way for us to purchase that book.
I'm spoken for.
Darn.
So hands off.
It'll have to be the book.
I don't sell through Amazon on the point of principle. So if you get me, michael.kerins@gmail.com, or get Sue, I'll tell you how to buy it and I'll post it with postage stamps of Her Majesty on it. And you get 2 works of art. You'll get this and you'll get her.
Perfect. All right. Thank you so much, Michael, for being here. What a treasure you are. And we love, we're not kids, obviously, but we love being brought back to Texas. And your draw, by the way, was pretty amazing. Pretty amazing. Although we need to get you here so you can get your draw a little bit better.
Well, what I want to practice is apparently you can make jam with jalapenos, like really spicy jam, really hot.
Yes.
Is that right, John Hale? Do you know about this? Can you do this? Can you actually make it?
A little bit of sugar, a little bit of peppers, who knows?
No, I'm not buying that one. Can anybody there make it?
Yes, we know exactly where to buy it. In fact, I'm in Fredericksburg, Texas right now, and they sell it right down the street. So I will send them to you. How's that?
Right. Isn't it about 1 a.m. in Glasgow now? Most people are asleep. Thanks for talking to us in the middle of the night. You're very lovely, Eva. So I went to bed and had 2 hours of sleep, and then my wife woke me up with tea and bread and marmalade, and that was that. So
she's the best. Get to bed.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Save me that text. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, we're going to move on. We do have other tellers here tonight, but I'm so glad Michael was able to share with everybody. And boy, it's pretty early there. Let's see, Jamie Blount, are you here? Because I know you came in probably after we got started. I hope you're here. Jamie, yes, there you are. Jamie was with SASA and then moved, probably loving it in North Carolina. Do I have that right? And we miss him, but we get to see him monthly. So Jamie has a story to share. So you're on stage right now, Jamie.
Thank you. I'll never forget that day, Friday, November 22nd, 1963, the day John Kennedy was assassinated. I remember I was in high school at the time. I was a sophomore. I was walking from the cafeteria to my next class, and I heard students saying, Kennedy got shot. Kennedy got shot. Kennedy got shot. I thought, well, there were several people in the school named Kennedy. I didn't know them all. I thought, well, I I guess one of the students named Kennedy got shot. I don't know which one, but then I listened and I thought, wait a minute. There's more to this than what I'm hearing. And I learned that President Kennedy had been shot. How could that happen? A young, virile, popular president shot? I couldn't believe it until I went to my next class, my Spanish class, and the teacher's instruction was interrupted by an announcement from the PA system. The person in the office connected the PA system with the radio, and we heard a national columnist say that President Kennedy had died of a gunshot wound in Texas. And then after that was over, the teacher broke the law. She instructed us in Spanish and then in English to pray for the president. That was against the law, prayer in school, big controversy back then. So she broke the law and we all prayed quietly. Went to my next class, which was biology. The teacher was so upset he couldn't begin to teach that day. He just let us sit and talk or work crossword puzzles or whatever we wanted to do. And anyway, I went home. My mother was very sad, of course. But fortunately, I had kind of an escape valve to the sadness of that day. I was a paper boy. I delivered the Evening Sun to people in my neighborhood 6 days a week for 60 cents a day. That was my wage, 60 cents. So anyway, I went out to the corner and my boss came by with the truck of newspapers, and I took my belt and put the newspapers into the belt and went off and delivered the papers to my customers. The newspaper headline was President Kennedy shot. I guess the newspaper was printed around lunchtime, and unfortunately, John Kennedy died after the paper went to press. But I felt a certain importance that day, being a paper boy the day President Kennedy was shot. I knew that I was delivering stale news, and I knew that people weren't waiting with bated breath for me to drop off their paper, but yet I had this feeling I was working an important job that day, delivering news on the day the president was assassinated. So I delivered all the newspapers, went home and watched TV that night, watched TV the next day, and watched TV the next day. That's about all that I did for that weekend, was watch TV. Sunday morning, as a family, we went to church, my mother, father, brother, sister, and me. And I remember vividly how the people in the church were very quiet. There were no bright colors. Conversation was very sotto voce. The mood was funereal, somber, very, very quiet. But then later, I thought, and I think many of us thought, aha, the rector of our church, the head priest, he will preach a sermon that will give us pause and relief and rest and comfort from the tragedy of this weekend. He climbed into the pulpit and said in so many words, all that can be said has been said. I have nothing to offer. I don't know what I could possibly say that has not been said. And he climbed down the steps and went into the chancel of the church and continued to conduct the service. What a disappointment. This giant of a man who was a brilliant orator and a superb theologian didn't have words of wisdom and comfort to offer us that day. That really came as quite a surprise. Well, anyway, life went on, and it went on, and it went on. And guess where I ended up many years later? In North Carolina. I arrived in North Carolina in early November of 2016. I voted for the president before I left Texas. And when I was in North Carolina as a newcomer and rode by the public library near my home, I saw lots and lots and lots of people out campaigning for their various candidates. Oh, not just for president, but for attorney general, for county commission, and so on. And there were quite a few signs, banners, if you will, for Donald Trump. And I thought, well, I'm in the Bible Belt in the South, in Western North Carolina. Certainly Donald Trump carries a lot of prestige in this area, which indeed he did and still does. That Sunday morning after the election and Donald Trump won, I wanted to go to church. I was new. I didn't belong to a church in this area, but I wanted to go to church just to feel some comfort, some relief, if you will. But I was afraid. Go to church in the Bible Belt? Isn't that a little dangerous, knowing your political passions? Maybe you better keep your political passions to yourself. It might not be a good idea to express yourself publicly about how you feel, what happened during the election. So I went to church, and what did I experience? The church was very quiet. I didn't see any bright colors. Everybody spoke sotto voce. It was a very, very dark experience, somber, funereal. It reminded me an awful lot of that Sunday after John Kennedy was assassinated. And then came time for the sermon, and the rector of the church climbed into the pulpit, and he said, throughout the ages, for thousands and thousands of years, people have had to deal with realities they really didn't like very much. That's about all they said. He climbed out of the pulpit and continued with the service. I thought, wow, this is the Bible Belt. And is this representative of the Bible Belt? I don't think so. I don't think so. And my comments to myself became very, very clear to me a few days later. I saw young men riding in pickup trucks, big, oversized pickup trucks with Donald Trump banners flying in the breeze at the back of the truck. I saw Confederate flags flying in the back of the pickup trucks. I saw Donald Trump flags and Confederate flags flying from the back of pickup trucks. Did I see any American flags? None that I remember. Did I see any North Carolina flags? None that I remember. But I saw quite a few Confederate flags, and I saw quite a few Donald Trump flags. Well, I was very surprised to learn that a number of people in my neighborhood that I had moved into were Donald Trump supporters. And they struck me as pretty nice people. I didn't get involved in any political discussions with them, but I thought, well, they're people. They voted their conscience, I suppose. They voted their passion. Who am I to condemn them because they don't feel the same way that I do about political realities? So I learned to become friendly with them, and I am to this day. We don't talk politics. We know better than that. But we still are able to accept each other for who we are as neighbors. And I'm beginning to think that maybe we have to realize the same thing that the preacher said that Sunday morning, that throughout the ages, people have had to deal with realities they really didn't want to deal with. And I think that was my reality that I had to deal with, that I'm still having to deal with. So what is the importance of the story? To me, it's that I live in a democracy, and it's a democracy that's been around for a relatively short period of time. If you look at the history of the world, it's a pretty young democracy in a pretty young country. Maybe we need to mature a little bit. Maybe we need to grow, and maybe we can grow without the wars and the turmoil and the bloodshed that was so evident in older civilizations such as China, India, Europe, Russia. And maybe this is a high water mark for us to live and to acknowledge each other despite our differences, and to live in a relative peace. So where I am today, I'm pretty much where I was 4 years ago politically. And what's going to happen in the next election, I don't know. I don't think anybody knows. But will I be in church that Sunday after the election? Probably. And will the atmosphere be somber, funereal, sad, dark? Who knows? But I'll be there. End of story.
Yes, we all will be. Good job. Thank you, Jamie. Your stories always make me think. Tolerance was a word that kept coming to my mind. Something we all must have to have, because I certainly don't want to see what could happen if we don't have it. So thank you so much. Always a pleasure to hear you. We're going to close out with Nathan Holiner, who's come to us all the way from Alabama. We love seeing him in San Antonio, but he is on his own in Alabama and trying out school, and it looks like he's doing a fine job. And
actually, Susan, I'm in Georgia now.
Sorry, Georgia. Thank
yes.
you.
Yeah, just remember, like I said, this isn't my permanent home now. It's just temporary. It's like this apartment allows me to sign a lease for a month. So like I said, don't be surprised if I come back home too soon. Okay.
Well, we're excited to have you on Zoom. So no matter what, we get you on Zoom. So that's important. And you have a little story to share. So go for it, Nathan.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. And the story I'd like to tell you is a story that my friend told with a puppet show they showed me on YouTube. It's the story of how frogs once had long, beautiful tails. Now, long ago, frogs had much longer tails than they do now. Their tails were so green and beautiful and long that all the animals admired them, and they said, "Gee, those frogs have the most beautiful tails we've ever seen." Well, this one frog was so proud of his tail that he started boasting. He always says, my tail is the very best there is. No other creature in this world has a much better tail than I. Now, of course, he made all the other animals terribly jealous. And so one day, the monkey came up to the frog and said, "Frog, I know your tail is beautiful, but I'm proud of my tail too. My tail helps me hang from the branches of trees, and I use it like an extra hand. So, but your tail can't do that." But the frog said, "I don't care. My tail is still the best, and yours isn't as beautiful as mine." Ooh, that made the monkey so mad he just ran off. A little later, the elephant came and said, "Frog, your tail is nice and beautiful, but my tail is also very pretty. It's very short. It's very short and stumpy, but I don't care. It's my tail. I wouldn't have any other tail." And the frog said, "Oh, I wouldn't think that. My tail is much prettier than yours, and that is why all the other animals like me more than they like you." Ooh, the elephant became furious and he marched off. Then one day there was a terrible drought in the jungle, and the god who watched over all the animals came down to the frog and said, "Frog, because you have the most beautiful tail of all the animals, I'm going to put you in charge of the water hole. And so I want you to make sure that all the animals get as much water as they can." "All right," said the frog, "I'll take it." And so the frog went down to the water hole and he said, okay, everyone who's thirsty may come down to the water hole and get free water, one at a time. And that's exactly what they did. And this worked fine for a while until one day the monkey came back and he wanted water from the water hole. But the frog recognized, and the monkey said, oh dear frog, I am so thirsty. May I please have some fresh water? But the frog looked at him and he recognized him and said, oh no, I'm sorry, but you made fun of my tail, and so I'm going to charge you $3 just to have water. The monkey was outraged. What? You're letting all the animals get water for free, and you're charging me $3 just to get for water? You should be fair. And the frog said, this is to teach you not to make rude comments about my tail. The monkey was now angrier than ever, and he said, I hope the God punishes you one day. And he went off. A little while later, the elephant came back and he wanted water too. And he said, oh dear frog, may I please have a free drink of water? I am so thirsty. And we elephants love nothing better than fresh, cool water. But the frog, remembering what the elephant said about his tail, said, oh no, you can't have any of this water unless you pay me $5. The poor elephant could not believe his huge, oversized ears. And he said, what? You're letting all the other animals get water for free and you're charging me $5 just to get one drink? You are so conceited. And the frog said, you didn't say anything nice about my tail, and so now you must pay the consequences. The elephant let out an angry trumpet and charged off in a huff. Now the god who had been watching over the frog all this time saw what he did to the monkey and the elephant. And the god became very angry at the frog. And so he went down and disguised himself as a lion. And then he walked right up to the frog. Now, at first, the frog didn't recognize the god because he thought he was meeting a lion. And he said, and then he looked up to the lion and said, oh, good day, good morning, Mr. Lion. I see you've come for a drink of water today. Well, I hope you don't say anything mean about my tail. The lion just stood in front of the frog and he said, Frog, I have heard what you did to the monkey and the elephant. You let all the other animals get free water, but you're charging them money to buy some. And the frog said, I just wanted to teach them a lesson about making rude comments about my tail. And the lion said, Frog, we all have our differences in life, but that doesn't mean everyone should be the same. But the frog said, I don't care. I'm just proud of my tail. I'm happy the way it is. And then the lion said, well, if you don't behave yourself properly, I am going to punish you greatly. How? Said the frog. Well, you'll see, said the lion. And for your information, said the frog, if you are going to say anything mean about my tail, I am going to charge you $10 for a drink of water here at the watering hole. And at that very instant, the And the lion transformed into the god. And the frog said, oh God, I am terribly sorry. I never should have mistreated the lion, the monkey, and the elephant that way. And the lion said, and the god said, well, you're too late. I gave you one last chance and you rejected it. And so now, for your punishment, you shall have a tail no longer, no more. And with that, the Lord, the god transformed back into a lion, and he bit off the frog's beautiful tail before disappearing back up into the sky. And the frog was so upset about that he lost his tail that he began jumping and screaming around. And when all the other animals heard his loud fit, they came running over and they burst out laughing. Well, the frog was so embarrassed, he hopped deep into the tall grass to hide from all the other animals. And that is why, that is why to this day, frogs do not have tails, and they always hide in the tall grass so as not to be embarrassed by the other animals. And that's my story.
Ribbit. I did not know that. It's so wonderful to hear a pourquoi tale about those frogs. I always love those frogs, but I knew there was something there. Now we get it. Thank you so much, Nathan. That was awesome.
You're welcome.
If I can get John to put us on gallery view, I would like to thank each and every single person who showed up today. I think we actually had about 17 folks, which is amazing. And so again, let me thank Mary Grace for sharing this wonderful event with us that's coming up Sunday. And do visit that website. And it is in the chat, so make sure you pull it up before we go. And I'd like to thank Susan Whipple for starting us all off. Of course, Jamie Blount, always. And Judi Tarowsky with her fabulous story. And Michael Kerins. And of course, Nathan, who finished us all off, which has just been fabulous. And of course, storytellers cannot be anything without our listeners. And thank you all so much for being here to hear our tales. Come back each month. We would love to have you. And anytime you want to try to share even a 2-minute story, I want you to. Don't ever feel like you can't. Again, thank you all. Just bring us all magic and joy and happiness. And the power story is certainly with us. Have a fabulous month. Hope to see you the first Wednesday of October. Enjoy the evening, everyone. Thank you so much. And you guys can unmute if you'd like. We'll stop the YouTube recording in a little bit. But if there's anybody who wants to say anything, you are welcome to do